All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Monday, everybody. Hope all of you guys had a great weekend. We are continuing our player rankings today with number 4, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Then at the tail end of the show, I was driving home from the gym this morning. I'm back to playing regular basketball, which feels fucking amazing. I'm not even going to try to sugarcoat it. I was listening to Zach Lowe on a beautiful day in Colorado, looking at the Rockies. Just a wonderful morning. And then Zach pitched an idea that I can't get out of my head now. And that's what if Giannis ended up getting traded to the Atlanta Hawks? And obviously, Giannis is a Buck for now and probably a Buck for this entire season. But it's more just a basketball concept that I want to dive into regarding the fit between Trae Young and Giannis and some of the groundwork that the Hawks have laid in recent years that I think actually makes them a prime candidate to benefit from a trade like that. So we'll talk about that at the tail end of the show. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Follow me on Twitter @JasonLT so you guys don't miss show announcements. Don't forget about our podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. It's also super helpful if you leave a rating and a review on that front. Jackson's doing amazing work on our social media feeds on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Make sure you guys follow us over there. And then last but not least, keep dropping mailbag questions in the YouTube comments, and we'll get to them on our Fridays throughout the remainder of the summer. All right, let's talk some basketball. We have officially made it to our top tier superstar tier. And once again, just like has been the case through each of the previous 2 tiers, you could literally list these in any order. Even more so than the last tier, I'd say 2 through 4 you could literally jumble them in any case. Like I'd argue the case to have Anthony Edwards over a guy like Donovan Mitchell, so from top to bottom of that tier, is much stronger than the case to have like a Luka or an SGA over Giannis. I think those 3 guys are very much on the same level. So if you have Giannis at 2 or Luka at 2 or Shea at 2, if you have any of those guys at 4, I would understand. But I have Giannis at 4. So let's start with his last season in review. He played 67 games, 30 points, 12 rebounds, and 7 assists per game with 2.1 stocks, 60% from the field, 22% from 3, 62% from the line. That's a 61% effective field goal percentage weighted for threes and a 63% true shooting percentage when you add free throws into the mix. Another award-heavy season for Giannis, 7th consecutive top 5 MVP finish, 7th consecutive first-team All-NBA selection, 9th consecutive All-Star selection, and his 7th consecutive year finishing in the top 10 in Defensive Player of the Year voting. Now, before we get into like where Giannis is at as a basketball player right now, I want to start with why I have Giannis ranked 4th. And again, we're splitting hairs here. I do not perceive much of a gap between him and Luka and SGA. But my case for putting Giannis at 4th centers around the idea that Shea and Luka are both better offensive players than Giannis. And as you guys know, even though I do factor in the defensive end of the floor, to me, it's not like a 50-50 weight. I think it is much easier to build an elite defense around an elite offensive player than it is to build an elite offense around an elite defensive player. I should say it's easier to fabricate a defense that works around an elite offensive player than it is to take an elite defense and get them a bunch of great shots. And so with that being the case, obviously Giannis is a great offensive player too. We're going to discuss that in detail. But for me, the case for Giannis, when he was considered the best player in the world in 2021, it's centered around like an overwhelming physical dominance, right? He was a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. He finished 2nd one year and 1st the following year. He obviously is a dominant rebounder, just his overall, like Energizer Bunny athleticism, right? But Giannis, while he's made some slight improvements on offense, which we're going to discuss, he's actually regressed quite a bit as a physical force in the league relative to where he was at his absolute peak. And here's a couple of statistical examples. First, his durability. Last year, for the 5th time in the last 6 years, Giannis failed to play 70 games. And that's after he successfully played 70 games in each of his first 6 seasons. He's also missed playoff games due to injury. 8 of Milwaukee's last 16 playoff games, Giannis was a DNP over the last 3 seasons. To his credit, when he's been available, he's consistently produced at that top tier superstar level. But And that's including this year's playoff run where he was incredible, but the dependability and the overall just like two-way dominance is just not quite what it once was. It's also showing up in some basic statistical areas. He's cutting corners on defense more than he used to. He used to be a 2.5 to 3 stocks per game kind of guy. Now he's like a 2 stocks per game kind of guy. Not too shocking. He's in his 30s now. He's got to conserve his energy from time to time. I still very much view Giannis as a game-breaking defensive talent when he needs to be in big spots, but you aren't getting like the 82-game monster on the defensive end that you got 5 years ago. And that is a factor here. So when I look at the fact that Shai and Luka are better offensive players, the case for Giannis would have to center around that overwhelming 82-game defensive dominance. And I just don't see that as prominent as it used to be. But again, we're splitting hairs. To be clear, I'm not arguing here that Giannis has substantially declined or that he doesn't belong in this tier. He very clearly does. I think he has a legit case for the number 2 spot. There are just some factors that I've considered when deciding to put Luka and Shai over him for this coming season. His case used to be overwhelming two-way physical dominance. He's just experienced some slight declines in that department that are giving those other guys the edge for now. Now let's talk about where Giannis is as a basketball player, starting with the offensive end of the floor. Giannis had an extremely productive shot creation season last year, fueled by improvements as a playmaker and as a shot maker. For starters, he shot 39% on jump shots last year. That was 9% better than the previous year and far and away the best percentage of his career. His previous high was actually just below 34%, so more than a 5% improvement on his previous career high in overall jump shot percentage. That was fueled by cutting down on his three-point volume and a substantial improvement in the mid-range. Giannis has never been able to establish that little left shoulder hook that I've been begging him to establish over the course of his career, but he has added the ability to knock down that little mid-range jump shot, primarily out of that left-handed high hesitation dribble that he can rise up and knock down. He made 115 of them last year on 43.4%. Again, nothing that's going to be the super reliable mid-range, short-range shot making that you see from the best scorers in the league, but certainly another element to his game that he's built out. The playmaking piece has been fueled by Giannis's improved ball handling and some chemistry with Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis as cutters and embracing one of the big strengths of that Bucks roster. That Bucks roster had a lot of flaws, but they were excellent jump shooting. The Bucks were actually the very best catch and shoot team in the entire NBA last year, getting 1.2 points per attempt on all of their catch and shoot looks. So through continuity and just that overall chemistry that he's built with his bigs, and obviously Brook is a very different player overall than Miles, but they have some similarities as pick and pop bigs, and it'll take some time for them to work out their timing. But I think that that'll be a similar type of offensive fit that he should be able to capitalize on. And then obviously Bobby re-upped. But through continuity and just chemistry with those two guys and embracing the strength of that roster and jump shooting, and honestly just him getting really good at making the reads after lots and lots of repetition, he's made substantial improvements as a playmaker over the course of the last couple of years. And all of this had mounted to some really impressive shot creation stats. He was low volume in pick and roll, like he only ran 375 in the regular season last year, but he got 1.13 points per possession. That's awesome. That's like a really good number. Great variety here too. Pick and pops with Portis and Lopez. He even had great chemistry with Lopez as a roller. I was watching a bunch of Giannis pick and roll tape this morning, and he just had so many examples where he would like put the defender in jail and like trap them on his backside and slowly work his way down the lane, waiting for Brook to rumble and for his screen defender to kind of just step up a touch too far and kind of hit Brook in that gap before the low man stepped over. And he just had a lot of really good reps with Brook Lopez as a roller as well. Ghost screens with shooters, just a shit ton of these, whether it was Taurean Prince or it was Gary Trent. The just sheer number of reps that he got with shooters just running up. AJ Green just running up and slipping out to the 3-point line. He got downhill a ton out of those. A lot of like just simple kickbacks. That was like an advantage creation thing that kind of started the engine of Milwaukee's offense. It was a super productive play type, Giannis in pick and roll. Like I mentioned earlier, I think it should continue to function well with Miles Turner. I actually want to see his volume double at least there this season. I think Giannis should run at least 750 pick and rolls this year. I think that's going to be one of the markers that I'm tracking with him. I just think it's really easy offense. It's like lean into point Giannis. You're light on ball handling, lean into point Giannis. Let him function more as an advantage creator. Those ghost screens, just slip, pitch it back, let that dude drive the closeout. It's an easy way for Giannis to start an advantage without really having to use too much energy. It was also where he shot the best from three. Just having the ball in his hand for a long time allowed him to build rhythm and feel comfortable with the ball in his hands. He was 8 for 16 on pull-up threes out of pick and roll last year. It was one of the few places where he shot the ball really well from the three-point line. Super high volume on ISO, and he was okay there, 1 point per possession. It's above average, nothing exceptional, but 1 point per possession, including passes on 452 reps. That ranked 10th out of the 23 players to log at least 250 ISOs last year. Super high volume on post-ups, and he was really good there. 1.12 points per possession on 450 reps. That ranked 5th out of the 12 players to log at least 250 post-ups last year. The overall offensive development for Giannis as a ball handler and as a shooter and as a playmaker have allowed him to, I actually think, improve overall offensively, despite him not quite being the wrecking ball of an athlete that he was in his younger years. The Giannis of his back-to-back MVP seasons was about sheer athletic force of will. This guy, the 2025-2026 version, he's not quite the whirling dervish that he used to be, but he's added enough polish and change of pace and overall just understanding of the game that I actually think he's a better offensive player than he used to be by a small margin. And the crazy thing is, he's still getting to the rim as much and as efficiently as ever without needing to expend as much energy as he used to. And a big part of that is he's just way smarter about how he goes about it. I was talking about passing yourself open, right? Like pass first players, they need to score the ball enough to keep the defense honest. That's an issue you're going to run into with the Nikola Jokic's of the world. Like LeBron James would have games like that in his prime sometimes where he would just be like, yo, dude, I understand you're making the right read, but the defense isn't reacting to you enough because you're not punishing them enough as a scorer, right? Like that's what pass first players need to deal with. These downhill, I don't care if it's a downhill guy or an over the top guy, these score first players, they need to pass the ball enough to keep the defense honest and to keep the floor spaced out. You add in a little change of pace, add in some improved ball handling moves, like little things like Giannis has just gotten way better at like getting his defender to commit to jumping over the top of a screen and then crossing back over and like getting guys caught in the blender there and all of a sudden finding himself a runway, like different angles on his drives and the timing on his drives. Like he's just added all of those little details that's actually allowed him to get to the rim. Again, like he's still over 70% on like crazy volume. And that's a credit to him and just his overall development as an offensive player. Now, there are two things that prevent Giannis from reaching the level as an offensive player that the players above him are. One is the gap in playmaking talent, specifically with guys like Jokic and Luka. Like even with Giannis's improvements, he's just not close to being next to either of those guys as overall playmakers. And then the second part of it, and this brings SGA into the equation where he's above him as well, but also with Luka and Jokic, is reliable short-range shot making. When Giannis is going against good to elite defenses in the half court, especially in like big playoff spots where they start to scout and really be prepared for everything, and they can successfully block the rim off from him, and they have the athletes to really close out to their shooters and spook them and kind of force Giannis to hit shots over the top, he still doesn't have a reliable hook shot. And 43% on pull-up middies is good, but it's not going to cut it. That's 0.86 points per possession, right? This is the recurring issue that Giannis has had over the years in slow down half-court environments, especially at the end of big playoff games. And it's the reason why the other stars at the top of the league have managed to slightly pass him at this point in his career. And then on the defensive end, the criticisms I have solely exist in the regular season context. His effort and focus on that end isn't quite the same as it once was when he won the Defensive Player of the Year award, and that can prevent him from having as much impact as he's capable of at times over the 82. But in like playoff, dead serious, we're in a big game and we need a bunch of stops like right now type of sequences, I still view Giannis firmly in the top tier of defenders in this league. And that's his leg up on Luka or Shea or the folks like the folks out there that want to make the case that Giannis is too. That's the case. Giannis can reach a level defensively that can like really change games. And that makes up for some of his situational offensive limitations. Again, the large sample, Giannis is as efficient a shot creator as you'll find in the league, but in just these situational type of spots, it can become an issue. But Giannis's ability to break the game defensively keeps him neck and neck with the guys who are better than him in those very specific situational type of spots. Bottom line with Giannis may not have made the skill improvements necessary to like really put the league in a stranglehold, but he's improved enough to age gracefully as one of the top tier superstars in this league. And it gives me confidence that even as he gets into his mid 30s, he's still going to be one of those guys that's at the very least in that top 6 or 7 players in the league, because he just has made the necessary improvements in a couple of key areas to counteract his declining athleticism as he ages. The only reasons he's slipped to the bottom of this tier for me center around overall reliability, with all the mileage on his body as he enters into his 30s, and his inconsistent defensive effort relative to his apex 5 years ago. But to be very clear, Giannis is still very much on that very short list of guys in this league that are indomitable forces of nature. And he has a very good case to be as high as number 2 on this list. Him being at number 4 is as much a testament to the depth of superstar talent that we have in this league as anything else. Now, again, for our second segment today, I wanted to discuss a theoretical Giannis trade. We are extremely excited to announce our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. Everyone knows and loves the Hard Rock hotels and casinos, and now you can use the top-rated Hard Rock Bet Sportsbook to place all of your bets all NFL season and beyond. Hard Rock Bet is the only legal sportsbook in the state of Florida and is also available in Arizona, Ohio, New Jersey, Indiana, Tennessee, Virginia, Illinois, and Colorado, with more states launching all the time. You can also play on Hard Rock Bet's online casino if you are in New Jersey. So from here on out, you're going to see us use betting lines from Hard Rock Bet, especially as we get into the NBA season. It'll be a big part of our coverage from there. And as we gear up for the NFL season, sign up for Hard Rock Bet and make a $5 bet, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Head over to Hard Rock Bet and sign up and make your first deposit today. So again, Zach Lowe, I was listening to him this morning, and he was just kind of going through a bunch of offseason news, and he brought up the Giannis piece, and he was talking about how, like, for now, he's like looking around, but there's nothing super tangible. We know all these teams are going to probe when the time comes, but he brought up Atlanta, and he brought up the fair point to bring up there, which is, well, if it didn't work with Dame super well, why would it work super well with Trae? And he was just bringing that up as a talking point. He didn't really dive into it. I don't think he is revealing his take there. I would imagine if Zach expounded upon that, he would probably agree with me that Trae is a better fit. But that's what I kept thinking when Zach brought that up. I thought, like, I think Trae's a very different basketball player than Dame. And I actually think flat out, that is a substantially better basketball fit with a substantially higher ceiling. Now, to be clear, again, as we mentioned off the top, we know that Giannis is most likely going to start the season with the Bucks. I know that they're trying to make that work. I've had this conversation with Bucks fans on the show before. Like, it's just about acknowledging reality. You probably can't win. And if you probably can't win and you're not close to figuring out a way for him to win, and he's entering into this like early mid 30s phase of his career where you're going to expect to see just a tiny bit of a decline, it's kind of in the best interest for everybody for him to get traded. It's in the best interest for Giannis because he's too damn good to be on too limited of a roster. Like, the East is super weak and wide open, and it feels like the Bucks can't win it. And like, at least they're firmly in that second tier of contenders in the Eastern Conference where it feels like a bunch of stuff would have to go right. And that just feels like a shame for a player who is, like we've talked about, firmly in the race for the 2 spot in the NBA among players and still firmly in his prime there in his early 30s. And for the Bucks, right now they have no future. And a Giannis trade could be the vehicle with which to propel your franchise into the next era of Bucks basketball. So again, like I get it. I understand. Bucks fans, you're probably like, I don't even want to fucking talk about this right now. And I understand that. But like I just keep coming back to, I think this is probably what's for the best for both parties. So as we start to look around the league, I have literally not been able to stop thinking about Atlanta as a Giannis fit. I think it's by far my favorite Giannis trade destination. I like it because Atlanta's kind of a young, fun team that I have been super high on over the course of this summer. I think Giannis would immediately propel them into top-tier championship contention. I think that the fit on the roster is fantastic, which we're going to dive deeper into. And I think Atlanta can put together a pretty nice package for him. I think the package is something along the lines of Jalen Johnson and Onyeka Okongwu. The Hawks have a bunch of available first-round draft compensation, so they can load it up with picks. All of a sudden, if you're Milwaukee, you get this super exciting young player in Jalen Johnson who's athletic and will put together highlight reels and will be a really fun guy for the fan base to root for. You have legitimate first-round draft compensation coming back to restock your troves in that department. I think it just makes a lot of sense. Now let's dig into the basketball. And I want to start with the Trae fit. In theory, the Dame Giannis fit should have been better than it was. And even though they experienced highs and the Bucks had stretches where their offense looked amazing, it just kind of felt like Dame and Giannis never quite got to the level as a pick and roll duo that they could have gotten to. I think part of this is Dame and his age. Like if it's 31-year-old Dame, it's probably a very different story. I think part of it is just the play styles. Dame has never been great at like change of pace in ball screens. And I think he struggled with that with Giannis as a role partner in terms of actually setting Giannis up with quality role man opportunities. Dame had this tendency to like just drive into the teeth of the defense instead of kind of more methodically work and pick and roll until the defense reacted to him so that he could set Giannis up with opportunities. I thought it was even jarring how like Kevin Porter Jr. seemed to have like some immediate natural ability to get the ball to Giannis in the pocket just because he played with more pace in the screens. And like it just never quite materialized the way it was supposed to. I even thought there was like way too much Dame Brook Lopez pick and pop and pick and roll because of the fact that those two just seemed like more of a natural fit as a partnership. I think Trae would figure out how to be awesome with Giannis right away. I think within weeks, the two of them would be cutting teams up. Trae is one of those guys that has a couple of very glaring flaws that cause him to slip down in player rankings conversations. And like, I've had him outside of the top 25 often. He only broke in this year because of substantial injuries above him on the list that, and I think I can't remember exactly where I had him, but I had him like 24, 25 in that range. And like I obviously view Trae as a player that comes with his downsides, and those downsides are obvious. Clear defensive limitations and competitiveness limitations on the defensive end of the floor. And then on the offensive end, he's extremely susceptible to switching. But outside of that, Trae's awesome. I view him as a legitimate offensive engine, an entirely different tier of overall offensive weapon than Dame was at the point of his career when he went to Milwaukee. I view him as one of the top tier playmakers and passers in this league. I view him as a guy that would immediately figure out how to turn that partnership into tons of awesome shots for both Giannis and for the other role players within Atlanta. I think that Giannis, we talked about Porzingis as like a fit to kind of help Trae with his susceptibility to switching. I think Giannis is a supercharged version of that. We went over Giannis's one-on-one numbers earlier. He's one of the better post-up players in the league at volume. Like I just think that fit makes a ton of sense. To put it very simply, I think Trae and Giannis would be a substantially better duo than Dame and Giannis were. And then from there, they have a really well-built roster for a Giannis group. The Kristaps Porzingis fit, we've seen that Giannis had chemistry with pick and pop bigs. We like the idea of having pick and roll flexibility with Giannis and Kristaps on the floor together, the ability to generate space with Kristaps as an above the break 3-point shooter, a better version of what Brook Lopez was in his time there. They've got that depth of perimeter talent, so you can give up a Jalen Johnson in that deal. And thankfully, Jalen makes $30 million now, so he can take up a big chunk of the salary that you need to send out. But you can keep Zachary Rissache, and you can keep Dyson Daniels, and you can keep Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and you can have like a depth of two-way role player talent surrounding the Trae and Giannis duo. It even fixes one of the specific deficits on that Atlanta Hawks roster. As much as I like that Atlanta Hawks roster right now, they've got a deficit of ball handling. It gets pretty dark once you get past Trae. Giannis is going to deal with a similar issue in Milwaukee this year. It's a big part of why I've talked about him increasing his pick and roll volume. Giannis would come in and immediately fix their ball handling deficit because of his ability to run action with all the improvements he's made as a ball handler and as an advantage creator in the league. I just think it's the most fun. Giannis going to some awesome team like Houston or Oklahoma City, or him getting traded to New York to play for the Knicks, like any of those sorts of situations, they kind of feel too obvious and too like they lack some of that intrigue. And Atlanta, I just think, would be a super fun team for Giannis to go to. It immediately reinvigorates Trae as one of the more influential players in the league. It takes a fun young team and propels them from a lower tier to an upper tier. It makes the Eastern Conference, it maintains the strength of the Eastern Conference. We don't want Giannis to go to the West. He's the only top tier star in the conference right now. And so, like, if Giannis were to get traded, right now I'm looking at Atlanta as easily my favorite spot for him to go. I just think it makes a ton of basketball sense. I've been thinking about it all day. All right, guys, that's all I have for today. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting us and supporting the show. We'll be back on Wednesday with number 3, and then we're tweaking our format a bit this week. Instead of a mailbag on Friday, we're going to do number 2 and number 1. So we're going to finish the list this week. I will see you guys on Wednesday.